You sense something before you can define it. A faint pressure, a quiet inner movement that doesn't match the surface of your life. Nothing looks different around you, yet something feels different within you. The familiar routines, the familiar thoughts, the familiar ways of acting begin to feel slightly out of place. It's subtle, almost hidden, as if a part of you you've never met is starting to wake up. Carl Jung often noted that growth doesn't announce itself. It doesn't arrive with certainty or confidence. It slips in quietly, disguised as tension, restlessness, or doubt. You begin to notice the small cracks in what once felt stable. You feel unsettled, unsure why the things that once fit now feel slightly too tight or too distant. This is the hidden beginning of transformation. It doesn't feel like progress. It feels like losing your grip on what you thought you understood. It feels like stepping into a hallway with no clear exit, guided only by a faint internal shift. You may feel as if you're unraveling, but something deeper is taking shape beneath that unraveling. A new part of you is trying to emerge, quietly reorganizing your inner world. You stand between the person you've been and the person you're becoming, and the space between the two feels unstable. It feels like falling apart. But this is the unseen shift, the first signal that real growth has begun. The first sign is the quiet realization that your old habits no longer feel comfortable. The behaviors you've relied on for years start to feel tight, outdated, or strangely out of place. You notice yourself going through motions that don't match who you feel you're becoming. What once felt normal now feels limiting, as if your inner world has grown, but your patterns haven't caught up. You find yourself questioning why you do things the way you've always done them. Tasks that used to feel automatic now feel heavy or unnecessary. You catch yourself pausing, hesitating, sensing that something inside you wants more room to breathe. Carl Jung often pointed out that a shift in the mind shows up first as discomfort with what used to feel familiar. You're not failing, and nothing is wrong. You're simply outgrowing the version of yourself those habits were built for. This is the first sign of growth, a subtle, steady awareness that the old way is too small for who you are slowly becoming. The second sign is when confusion suddenly takes the place of the certainty you used to rely on. You notice that the things you were once sure about don't feel clear anymore. The goals you chased, the choices you made, the direction you trusted, none of it feels as sharp as it once did. You wake up and realize you don't fully know what you want. You try to make decisions, but everything feels blurry. It's like your mind is shifting, but you don't know what it's shifting toward yet. You might feel frustrated because you're used to having answers. You might worry that you're losing your sense of direction. But what's really happening is that you're letting go of old answers that no longer match who you're becoming. Carl Jung often pointed out that confusion shows up when your inner world is changing faster than your outer life. Your old motivations don't fit anymore, but your new ones haven't formed yet. So you feel stuck in the middle, not who you were, but not yet who you're becoming. This stage isn't a failure. It's a sign that your mind is making space for something more honest, more aligned, and more true to you. This is the second sign of growth. You feel lost, but only because you're outgrowing the person you used to be. The third sign is when you start noticing thoughts you used to push aside. They show up quietly at first. Ideas, questions, small realizations you never paid attention to before. You begin to catch tiny reactions inside yourself that you would have ignored in the past. You start seeing patterns in how you act and think. You notice when something doesn't feel right, even if you can't explain why. You pay attention to the small moments when you feel uncomfortable, uncertain, or out of alignment. These thoughts aren't loud, but they're persistent. They return throughout the day, nudging you, reminding you that something within you is trying to be seen. They make you pause, reflect, and question yourself in a new way. Carl Jung often emphasized that change begins with noticing what was once hidden. When you start seeing your own patterns clearly, it means your awareness is expanding. You're becoming more honest with yourself, even in quiet ways. This new awareness can feel strange. It can make you wonder why you're suddenly paying attention to things you once brushed off. But this is part of growing. Your mind is becoming sharper, more observant, more willing to face the truth. This is the third sign of growth. You begin to see yourself more clearly because you're finally noticing the thoughts you used to ignore. The fourth sign is when you start asking yourself hard questions about your life. You notice that the routines, habits, and choices you once took for granted no longer feel automatic. You begin to wonder if the way you've been living really fits who you are now. You question the paths you've chosen, the ways you spend your time, and the things you prioritize. Even the small, everyday decisions feel different because your inner world is shifting. You might feel uneasy or restless because the old way of doing things no longer feels right. Carl Jung emphasized that growth comes from facing yourself honestly. When you question your life, you are confronting the parts of yourself that need change. This questioning is uncomfortable, but it's a sign that your inner self is becoming stronger and more aware. It's not about doing everything differently all at once. It's about noticing where your life no longer aligns with who you are becoming. Even small doubts and questions are a signal that you're moving forward. This is the fourth sign of growth. You begin to question your life because the old patterns no longer fit the person you are slowly becoming. The fifth sign is when you feel a quiet pull toward something new, even if you can't explain it. You notice yourself drawn to ideas, projects, or directions that feel unfamiliar. It isn't a loud or clear call, it's subtle, almost like a gentle tug you can't ignore. You might not understand why you want this change. You might feel impatient, restless, or curious without knowing what you're seeking. Even though it feels uncertain, something inside you knows that moving in this direction matters. Carl Jung believed that growth often comes from following these inner impulses. They appear when your mind and life are ready for a new stage of development. You don't need to fully understand them yet. You only need to notice them and take small steps forward. This pull can feel strange or uncomfortable. It challenges the routines and patterns you've relied on for comfort. But it's also exciting because it signals that your inner self is trying to expand. This is the fifth sign of growth. You feel drawn to something new, and even though it's unclear, your inner self is guiding you toward change. The sixth sign is when you start noticing the behaviors that hold you back. You see patterns in your actions, reactions, or habits that no longer serve you. Things you once ignored or accepted suddenly stand out as obstacles. You might feel uncomfortable or frustrated because recognizing them shines a light on areas you've avoided. You may catch yourself reacting in old ways that feel automatic but aren't helping you grow. Even small moments of awareness matter. They show that your mind is paying attention to what needs to change. Carl Jung often pointed out that growth begins with awareness of limitations. You can't move forward if you don't notice what's holding you back. Seeing these patterns isn't a failure. It's a sign that your inner self is becoming stronger and more conscious. You might feel resistance at first. You might want to ignore it or push it aside. But the more you notice, the more you can make space for change and growth. This is the sixth sign of growth. You see your own limitations clearly, and that awareness is the first step toward moving beyond them. The seventh sign is when your inner voice starts to speak up more clearly. You notice subtle signals, instincts, or feelings that you used to ignore. They may come as thoughts, urges, or a quiet sense of knowing, and they feel harder to dismiss. You start paying attention to what your mind and body are trying to tell you. Even small nudges become noticeable, guiding you in decisions or prompting reflection. You realize that this inner voice has always been there, but you are finally listening. Carl Jung emphasized that growth involves connecting with the deeper parts of yourself. Your inner voice is a guide, helping you see what matters, what needs change, and what aligns with who you are becoming. It's not about following it blindly, just noticing it and letting it influence your choices. This change can feel strange or even uncomfortable. You may question why you didn't listen before or why it feels louder now. But the louder it becomes, the more it signals that your awareness and self-understanding are expanding. This is the 7th sign of growth. You start hearing and trusting your inner voice, even when it challenges the patterns you've relied on for years. The 8th sign is when you feel a tension inside you between who you were and who you're becoming. You notice that the old version of yourself no longer fits comfortably with your emerging self. Even familiar ways of thinking, acting, or responding begin to feel out of place. You might feel uneasy or restless because your past habits and beliefs are clashing with your new awareness. Every choice, every action can feel like it carries weight, as if two sides of yourself are pulling in different directions. It can feel unstable, confusing, or even frustrating. Carl Jung often described growth as a process of reconciling different parts of yourself. This tension is natural. It means your inner world is shifting and reorganizing. It's uncomfortable because real change requires letting go of what no longer serves you, even when it's familiar. You might want to rush past it or escape the discomfort. But sitting with this tension, noticing it, and reflecting on it is exactly what allows transformation to happen. This is the 8th sign of growth. You feel pulled between your old self and your emerging self, and that friction is a signal that real inner change is underway. The 9th sign is when you start letting go of things without fully understanding why. You release habits, routines, or ways of thinking that used to feel important, even if nothing in your life forced you to. It feels strange because the change isn't planned. It just happens naturally as part of your inner shift. You might feel uneasy, uncertain, or even a little scared. Letting go can feel like losing control, like falling into something unknown. Yet at the same time, you feel a small sense of relief, a lightness that comes from clearing space inside yourself. Carl Jung emphasized that growth often requires releasing what no longer fits. The mind reorganizes itself when old patterns are dropped, making room for new ways of thinking and being. You don't always need to understand the reasons now, you only need to notice the shift and allow it to happen. This can be subtle or sudden. You might not even realize you're letting go until you look back and see how far you've moved. This is the 9th sign of growth. You start releasing old ways, even without knowing why, because your inner self is preparing for something new. The 10th sign is when you feel that something inside you is quietly changing, even if you can't see it. It's a sense that your thoughts, feelings, and reactions are being rearranged in a way you don't fully understand. You feel different, but you might not be able to explain exactly how or why. You notice that the way you respond to situations has shifted. Your perspective on yourself, your decisions, and your priorities begins to feel different. Even small changes in the way you think or feel are part of this internal reorganization. Carl Jung often said that real growth happens beneath the surface. You don't always feel stronger right away. You feel unstable, uncertain, or even chaotic. But this is the process of rebuilding yourself from the inside out. You might feel impatient or frustrated with the pace of change. You might wish it were more obvious or faster, but even if it feels invisible, the work is happening quietly and deeply. This is the 10th sign of growth. You sense that your inner world is reorganizing, and even if it feels unsettling, it's proof that transformation is happening. The next step is to hold on to the growth you've begun and guide it consciously. You can't force change, but you can create conditions for it to continue. First, notice your progress. Pay attention to the signs you've already experienced, the habits you've outgrown, the confusion, the tension, the new awareness. Recognizing these moments reminds you that you are evolving, even if it feels slow. Second, make space for reflection. Spend time observing your thoughts, feelings, and actions without judgment. Ask yourself what feels aligned and what feels outdated. Journaling, quiet thinking, or simply pausing during your day can help you stay aware of your inner shifts. Third, allow small, intentional steps toward change. You don't need to transform everything at once. Even tiny adjustments in habits, routines, or thinking can strengthen your growth. Follow the subtle pulls you feel inside. They often lead to meaningful progress. Fourth, accept discomfort as part of the process. Growth isn't comfortable, and it rarely feels smooth. Every moment of tension or uncertainty is a sign that you're stepping into something new. Finally, stay curious and open. Your inner self is constantly evolving. Keep paying attention to your thoughts, behaviors, and instincts. Trust that even when it feels like falling apart, you are moving toward a stronger, more aware version of yourself. Growth doesn't happen without challenges. The next sign is that you'll start noticing obstacles, not just in your life, but inside yourself. Old fears, doubts, and habits you thought were gone may resurface. You may feel frustrated, impatient, or even question yourself as you move through this process. The first step is to notice these challenges without judgment. Don't try to push them away or pretend they aren't there. See them clearly for what they are, signals that your inner self is being stretched. They are not signs of failure. They are signs that something important is changing inside you. Second, resist the urge to retreat. It's tempting to go back to old routines or habits that feel safe and familiar. But leaning on what's comfortable will only slow your growth. Step into the discomfort instead. Stay present with it, even if it feels heavy or confusing. Third, break challenges into small, manageable steps. You don't have to solve everything at once or fix every part of yourself immediately. Focus on one habit, one thought pattern, or one action at a time. Each small step builds momentum, creating a foundation for bigger changes. Fourth, embrace setbacks as part of the journey. You may fall back into old behaviors, feel stuck, or lose clarity about your path. This is normal. Setbacks are not failures. They are opportunities to learn, adjust, and strengthen yourself. Each time you rise again, you build resilience and deepen your self-awareness. Yes. Maintain a connection with your inner purpose. Even when progress feels slow or invisible, remember why you started this process. The growth you are experiencing is shaping a stronger, wiser version of yourself. Challenges are not obstacles. They are proof that transformation is happening. Finally, be patient and compassionate with yourself. Change takes time, and your mind and life are reorganizing at their own pace. Give yourself space to feel, reflect, and adjust. Trust that each challenge you face is helping you grow in ways you cannot yet see. The next step is learning how to make growth stick. You've felt the shifts, noticed the signs, faced the challenges, but change isn't complete until it becomes part of your everyday life. Lasting growth comes from creating habits that support your evolving self. First, start with small daily practice that reinforce your awareness. It could be taking a few minutes each day to notice your thoughts, reflecting on your choices, or pausing before reacting. These moments may feel minor, but over time, they build a strong foundation. Consistency matters more than intensity. A small step repeated every day is far more powerful than a big effort done once. Second, track your progress in simple ways. Pay attention to how you respond differently to situations, what patterns you're noticing, or how your thoughts and feelings shift over time. Even subtle changes are proof of growth. Tracking helps you see progress when it feels invisible, giving you motivation to continue. Third, protect your attention and energy. Remove distractions, reduce habits that pull you back into old patterns, and make space for reflection and action. Set boundaries that allow you to focus on what truly matters to your inner development. Your mind needs quiet space as much as it needs deliberate effort. Fourth, stay curious and open. Ask yourself questions often. What feels right? What feels off? Explore new ideas and perspectives without judgment. Curiosity keeps your mind flexible and allows you to notice subtle shifts early, helping you guide your growth consciously. Fifth, revisit challenges and setbacks regularly. Notice where tension or discomfort arises. Ask yourself what these moments are teaching you about yourself. Use them as guides for adjusting your approach, learning, and strengthening your inner self. Challenges are not interruptions. They are part of the growth process. Sixth, connect your actions to purpose. Remind yourself why you want to grow and what kind of person you want to become. When growth feels slow or invisible, this connection gives meaning and direction to your efforts. Finally, trust the process and be patient. Growth is rarely linear. Some days you will feel strong and aware, other days confused or pulled backward. Even in those moments, your inner self is quietly reorganizing, evolving, and expanding. Remember, growth isn't about perfection. It's about awareness, small steps, and trusting the process. It's about noticing the subtle shifts inside you and following them, even when the path is unclear. You are becoming someone stronger, wiser, and more aware. Even when it feels like nothing is changing, your inner world is reorganizing quietly, preparing you for the next stage of yourself. This journey doesn't have an end. It is the ongoing process of stepping into your potential, learning from discomfort, and embracing change. The more you notice, reflect, and act, the more your growth becomes real and lasting.